Whose screen are we looking at? Hey, welcome everybody. Waiting for Brian to join, I think. Got the man of the hour, Jake Hall's here. I see that. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Thanks a lot, man. Good to be back.
Yo, yo.
I'm starting to recognize some of these avatars coming back. I see Caleb, I recognize that one. Maraka, Jimmy, I recognize that one. See me, Francis, I've seen that one. Avatars, they mean stuff. Like get that brand recognition.
Yo, Jake, are you gonna be sharing slides?
I will be. Yeah.
All right, cool. I've just made you co-host. So, Jake
Yes, sir.
is on a really strict timeline because he has to go for his Ramadan prayers afterwards. So, we're gonna start in exactly 2 minutes time. I'm just trying to organize the co-host permissions and all that, and then we jump off. Alessa, if you don't mind, please share for me the YouTube link in the group, just in case people are having challenges. Thank you. Hi, Sarah.
Oh, I've already done that, Brian. I've already shared it in the group.
Thanks, Palessa. So, Sarah's here. So 2 minutes and then we jump off. Hi, Sarah. How you doing? Sarah, you're on mute.
I just had so many links for this thing, and so I was waiting for a different. I'm in a different room, and then I was like, "Wait a second, it says something else." Sorry.
No. That's all right.
I'm good though. How are you?
I'm good. Nice seeing you, Sarah. Excellent seeing you. Like, I'm so happy
Yeah,
to
nice to
seeing you and
see
Jake. Jake,
you.
how's everything with your fast? Everything's going on well?
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, everything's going well. And
Bless you,
but no,
Alhamdulillah.
it's been a busy few weeks. Obviously, last few days of the month, alongside with loads of other deadlines at Hashgraph, at school, all of this stuff coming together. But we get through it, and this is going to be a nice wrap up to the week. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to be talking for the
Thank you.
next time.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jake. Sarah, hold up. Let me just mute everybody's mic. All right, cool. So, Jake, you wanna unmute yourself so that you quickly start your presentation and then Sarah jumps in.
Sounds good. Shall I get straight to it?
Yeah, let me just introduce the session and introduce you guys. Then you guys are going to introduce yourselves. And then, Jake, you're going to do your presentation. And then you can jump off at your leisure. And then Sarah will do her presentation as well. So, hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Sarah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, oh no, it's okay. Like I don't have anything specific for the present. I just follow your title, right? For me.
Well,
So you can introduce me and ask me a question, and then I can
so
answer.
Sarah, you can the you remember the whole segment we did on smart contracts, NFTs,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, DAOs
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah,
and then your
yeah.
usual succession stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my usual thing. I
Yeah. So
wasn't
your
sure
usual
because
thing.
it's that like all about digital assets universe, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, so your usual thing. And now people can literally see that I don't prep the panelists. They are superstars.
right.
So literally we don't like do pre-calls and all. Like this is on the fly. This is literally like a kamikaze mission. You go in, it is what it is. Yo, so everybody, first of all, big up yourselves, big up yourselves. It's Friday. It's Friday. It's Friday. Could you guys just unmute your mics? Like, let me just hear, guys. Like, it's Friday. You've finished week 1 of the boot camp. It's been wild. It's been crazy. It's been a roller coaster ride. Like, just unmute yourself. Whoever's ready, just be like, yo, Friday. You know what I mean? Big up yourself. If you're in the building, yo. Could be Sarah, could be Jake, could be Palessa, could be Nino. Guys,
Friday up in here, bro. It's Friday. It's Friday.
It's Friday,
Yo,
guys. It's Friday. It's Furahi Day. Furahi
yo,
Day.
yo, who's that? Paul, that's you. Paul, that sounds
Yeah,
like you.
yeah. You know,
Yo,
here we say
Paul.
Furahi Day. Furahi
Yeah, in
Day.
Kenya we say Furahi Day because it
Yes.
means like happy day.
Furahi.
Hey, okay, cool. Somebody has a really problematic mic. So I'm gonna mute everybody and then Jake and Sarah introduce yourselves. Then let's get this party started.
Okay, well, I'll go first.
Hold up, let me mute everybody first because there's people in the audience who have noisy mics, and then you unmute yourselves, yeah? All right, cool.
Well, I'm Jake. Some of you might have seen me before. I was on one of the in one of the pop-up stores maybe 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I obviously I know I know Brian because we're both we're both based in Nottingham. We're both students, student entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But sort of in my limited time, I also work at Hashgraph. So Hashgraph, if you don't know, Hashgraph is we're basically the labs for the layer 1 blockchain called Hedera. So Hedera is a layer 1 blockchain, similar to the likes of Ethereum, Solana. You can create tokens, you can deploy smart contracts, you can interact with tokens and transfer value really well. And more recently in my role at Hashgraph, I'm in developer relations, which is sort of coming to these sessions talking about the network, the technology is exactly what I do. But more recently, I've been doing a lot of stuff within the intersect of AI and Web3. So I'm going to be doing a bit of a talk about that today. And we can sort of take it relatively slowly. I'm going to be giving a presentation of a talk which I did yesterday in our monthly technical call. But yeah, I'll be covering those basics in the next half hour or so. That's me.
Thanks, Jake. Let's get the party started, and then Sarah, over to you.
Okay, so my name is Sarah Johnson. I'm a VP for high net worth planning for an amazing Canadian bank called RBC. I work for the family office. I am specialized in international estate planning, art collection management, and digital assets estate planning, and digital assets in general. I like to think of myself as a techie lawyer. I also love going to school, so my name is followed by all sorts of titles and certifications. I just love learning because, as you know, the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. And there's so much out there that that has to be discovered. I'm honored to be here with Jake, and I hope I can, lift up the spirit because my presentation is going to be mainly on estate and so death and taxes. But hopefully, I'll make it fun enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Jake, over to you. And you have co-host permission, so you could share your slides whenever you're
Okay, perfect. So well, I don't even know if I'll go through the whole slides here, just because it gets into some relatively technical concepts, which are quite specific to Hedera. So what I'm going to try and do, every time you see Hedera, think that it can be substitute any blockchain, and I'm going to go basically through 2 really big parts where AI in Web3, people like yourselves who are sort of entrepreneurial, maybe you're developers, maybe you want to get involved in Web3, how you can think about using AI. And there's 2 key parts which I want to sort of talk to you about. Is that there's one part which is, okay, how can I use AI to actually develop the blockchain or Web3 software? How can I use it to create ideas? How can I use it to implement code, create smart contracts? That's one part. And the other part is, how can I get AI to use Web3? And that's where we're going to be talking about AI agents. And when we get to that point, I can give a bit of a background as to AI agents, because I'm aware maybe not everyone's heard of it. could we just do like a quick show of hands now? Has anyone heard of AI agents? Or maybe a better way of doing it is actually who hasn't heard of it, because then I can gauge how much detail. So if you haven't heard of AI agents, please put your hands up. Or you'd like an explanation at least. Maybe you've heard about it, but you'd like a bit of confirmation as to what they are.
Yeah, or just type no, N in the chat quickly, yeah? So we get this party going.
Okay, cool. There's enough for me to, yeah, perfect, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Cheers,
So
guys.
this should be really useful then. So let's first go into specifically with Hedera. What can you use for developing AI on Hedera? What can you use AI for to develop stuff on Hedera? And I just wanted to show again, Hedera is one layer one blockchain. There are many other ones, and other blockchains probably have similar tool sets. With Hedera specifically, we've got our own custom AI bot. We've got our own custom chat GPT, which I can actually show in action.
Jake, sorry to interrupt. Could you just give the audience like a brief overview, like an elevator snapshot of Hedera blockchain? Because they've heard of different chains,
Yeah.
but just give us a quick whistle-stop tour of what Hedera is.
Do you know
and then
what?
get into the AI.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
With the particular chatbot which I'm talking about.
Okay, cool. Cheers.
So if you've got ChatGPT, you can find this Hedera Hivemind, and essentially Hedera Hivemind, it is the go-to knowledge resource for anything Hedera. It's got the latest documentation, the latest code repositories that we have, and let's ask it. So give me an exec summary on Hedera. Be concise. Let's see what Hedera Hivemind has to say about Hedera. So it's obviously going to be searching the knowledge base, searching the documentation, the most up-to-date documentation. And of course, it's not just for doing stuff like this. You can actually also use it for coding. So you can use it for smart contracts. Maybe you might have an idea, okay, I want to build a smart contract, but I'm not technical. That's where you could use something like this. You can use generative AI and large language models to say, this is my idea. Please tell me how I can create a smart contract and deploy it onto the network. But let's quick executive summary on Hedera. High performance, open source. That's a really important one, actually. Public distributed ledger, which uses a consensus algorithm called Hashgraph. So actually the founder of Hedera, he created this very innovative way of nodes meeting consensus called Hashgraph, which is a different technology to, for example, proof of work algorithms, which is what traditionally blockchains like Bitcoin did, and the blockchain algorithm which they will use. It's got a really high throughput, so we can do 10,000 plus transactions per second. That can actually be scaled even higher, but at the moment, 10,000 per second. Very cheap. Interestingly, it's priced in dollar. So whenever you pay for a transaction, you know, if I'm going to be creating a token or I'm going to be transferring 1,000 transactions, the price, while it's paid in HBAR, the HBAR amount is priced in dollars. So a business could always forecast in that dollar cost how much their usage and consumption of the network is going to be, which is something that a lot of other chains don't have. A lot of chains are variable prices, and it's priced it's not pegged to the dollar. It's just priced in the native currency, and it's pretty quick as well. In terms of services, what you can do on top of that Hedera consensus platform, you can obviously do smart contracts. So if you've heard of the EVM, that's the Ethereum virtual machine. The EVM is sort of it's the standardized way of building smart contracts, and we are EVM compatible, meaning if you're a Ethereum developer and you have smart contracts on Ethereum, you can use those very same Solidity smart contracts and bring it over to Hedera. Or if you're looking to build interoperable applications, interoperable dApps, you could also use the Hedera layer to provide a Hedera outlet, as well as using Polygon, Ethereum, Base, and other EVM compatible chains. So that's a big push which we've been working on over the last few years to make ourselves EVM compatible, just because there's so many amazing products which are out there which are built for the EVM. So by making us able to integrate into that, it taps into a really good audience of developers and of users as well. But we also have the native token service. So you can natively create fungible tokens, natively create non-fungible tokens. What does that mean? It means that you can essentially create tokens without actually having to use the EVM, which is very smart contract based. And there's a consensus service. This is a very interesting one. It has all the properties of blockchain or distributed ledger technology, such as immutability, meaning you cannot change what's happened in the past, transparency, and sort of trust and auditability, the ability for other people to look at it and go, this is true. I believe that this is an accurate reflection as to what happened. Except it doesn't do that with tokens. Or it doesn't do it with smart contracts. It does it with any arbitrary bit of data. So you can actually add any string, any object onto the consensus service, and that can be used as a means of, okay, I provably sent this message at this time, signed by this account. And that can also, I mean, that the idea, the use cases that come out of this are very broad. So we're seeing it being used a lot for sustainability when it comes to proving sustainable claims. Let's say I'm measuring how much carbon I'm capturing, and I've got some Internet of Things device which is recording the grams or kilograms of sequestered carbon that's being captured. All of those, every single second, that measuring device could be transmitting a message onto the consensus service showing, okay, timestamp this time I've just captured 0.1 gram. 1 second later, 0.1 gram, and that can then be used to go, right, we trust this particular device, and we can see the immutable log of claims that it has, and use that to maybe then create a token down the line, like a carbon credit. And then finally, the file service. I'm not going to go into that one a bit into too much detail, but mainly the three key services are the smart contract EVM service, the native token service, and obviously within that there's sort of more stuff, and then the consensus service as well. So that's a bit of an executive summary on Hedera. And you can use this tool if you want to find out more about Hedera, or if you want to start building applications which use the Hedera technology. Definitely check out Hedera Hivemind. It's a really up-to-date tool, low risk of hallucination, which is a big risk of large language models, especially when you're dealing with technology that changes. For example, I asked ChatGPT, which has a knowledge cutoff date in 2023. If I ask it a question about a new software library which comes out in 2025, it's often going to hallucinate and talk about the 2023 version. But obviously, when you have your own ChatGPT, which is plugging into the latest documentation and the latest tutorials, you mitigate that risk slightly. So that's one tool which you can use developing on Hedera. Of course, you can also use the out-of-the-box ChatGPT. That's definitely another option as well. But again, be conscious of, okay, sometimes if I want something very specific to Hedera, it might be better to use the Hedera Hivemind, purely because there's going to be that lower risk of hallucination. There's another tool which we have, which is inside of our Discord, which is called Kappa AI. So Kappa is a third-party AI vendor, which is similar to ChatGPT. It reads all of the latest documentation, and you can ask it questions via chat, and it searches the knowledge bank like we sort of did just now, except you can do it via Discord. So for sometimes it's a bit nicer. It's also a little widget inside of our documentation on docs.hedera.com. So that's, again, these are talking about how you can use AI to build Web3 applications. And it's not just limited to code. You can also, if you're maybe you're more business minded, you can use it to come up with use case ideations. You could use it for creating software architectures. You can use it for suggesting marketing strategies within Web3. You can use AI for many things. And I'd recommend using it as much as you can, because it'd be sort of like not using Google when it came out 20 years ago, because you like your books. And of course, there's a time and place for everything. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the other side. So we spoke about how can you use AI in Web3. Now we're going to talk about how AI agents can use Web3. And before I go into the slides, I'm going to give a background into AI agents. And I guess we could do a little bit of stuff on just LLMs in general. So an LLM, or what is colloquially known as AI now, even though there is a big difference. AI is much broader than specific large language models. AI encompasses many other things. But conventionally now, when we talk about AI, most people are talking about large language models and the newer innovations. Now, a large language model is a model where you give it an input, which is typically some text, something, a prompt, or it might be an image. And that model has been trained on sometimes trillions of parameters of data. I mean, these OpenAI ones, and the state-of-the-art OpenAI, Anthropic, Google models, the amount of data that they have taken in is just absolutely breathtaking. And it uses that data to basically go, right, we've got all of this data here. Within it, you should now be able to detect patterns of how to respond to people. You've now got basically you've got a knowledge base of what's probably going to come after a particular prompt. So that trains the model. You give it a prompt, and then it outputs what is the probabilistic thing that should come out in response to that message. That's how large language models work. But notice they don't have the ability to, let's say, call an external API. So inherently, large language models, they don't even need, if you've got it on your computer, they don't even need Wi-Fi. You don't need to have a network. You can get an open source one and download it and run it on your computer. You'll be able to get answers without it needing a network connection. But one of the problems with that is that because this LLM is just this model is sort of self-contained, it doesn't have the ability to do something like transfer HBAR, or it doesn't have the ability to read the internet. It's sort of black box. What AI agents do is they build almost a framework above the base LLM, and it gives the large language model the ability to do what's called function calling, or using tools, or using actions. Different people call it different things, but they all mean the same thing, where you essentially say to the LLM, okay, these are the tools that you have available. It might be the tool to transfer crypto. It might be the tool to check the weather. It might be the tool to book a hotel. You can give it these tools, and then the AI is intelligent enough to go, right, I've just had this question. Okay, the question says, tell me the weather in Kenya. The AI is then clever enough to realize, within my context window, I also have the ability to call this tool to execute this piece of code, which looks like this, and that code gets the weather. Okay, I'm going to try that. So it will then take the relevant data from the prompt, and it will package it in a way where it can now be called by that tool which it has available. The tool will just be that the tool is just running like a normal piece of software, a normal piece of code. It executes on the machine, it does an API request or whatever, it does a crypto transfer, and then it comes back with the answer, gives that back to the LLM, and the LLM can then respond, okay, you asked for the weather in Kenya, I've just called this tool, the weather in Kenya is very sunny. But these are particularly picking up traction. These are particularly picking up traction with Web3, and the reason for that is because with Web3, you now empower AI agents, and in particular, autonomous AI agents. You empower AI agents to essentially have the ability to actually start transacting value. An AI agent cannot get a bank. You're not going to be able to have an autonomous AI agent send a request to their local bank and say, okay, yeah, this is past KYC and get access to a bank account. This is not very feasible. And I mean, Sarah, you're working at RBC, so maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at least for now, AI is not going to be passing the KYC AML checks. But what AI can use almost more easily is crypto. Because an AI can't have a bank, but it can have a crypto wallet. It can easily use a private key, and it can easily call these specific tools around these specific tools which are specific to AI and specific to Web3. So there's no reason why an AI cannot transfer HBAR to another AI who's going to pay that AI to generate a photo. And then that photo will come back, and you've got this inter-agent commerce. There's no reason why an AI can't create a token and airdrop it to its community. And that's what we have been really focusing on at Hedera. So we've built a Hedera agent kit. I'm back to the slides now. We've built a Hedera agent kit. I'm actually also going to send all of these relevant links, which I'm going to be talking about in here. This is probably more so for the technical people in here, but by all means, have a look at it if you're not as well. We've built the Hedera Agent Kit. The Hedera Agent Kit is essentially it's a software developer kit which allows you to easily integrate the Hedera functionality into AI agent frameworks. And I can go into what AI agent frameworks are. I see that Nino's got his hand up though, so I cannot jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. So I'm from a cybersecurity background. I like to find problems in thoughts and ideas and platforms. I love it. And you just said that you have an AI chatbot that is attached to a wallet, more or less, that can send money. So I immediately think, how do you stop it from just going crazy and someone trying to manipulate that in some way? Just if at some time you can get into that,
well,
we can save it to the end.
I think it's a good time to do it now. I think so. That what I'm seeing in the market is there's generally two instances where you're going to be using where AI is going to be doing transactions like executing something on your behalf or just executing a swap. Now, the first one is when the AI is autonomous. So what we're actually seeing now is there are AI agents which are to an extent self-sustaining. They're generating income to pay for their server costs. And they have their own private key, they have their own wallet. They're not using your wallet, they're using their own one. And in that case, the risk is reduced because obviously if it's trading its own money, it doesn't matter. What this AI does with its money doesn't affect me. It can do what it wants. But on the other side, which is when we're getting AI agents to potentially execute transactions on our behalf, that's where the risk comes in play, especially to your point. What if someone starts maybe poisoning the model, the underlying model, so that it is now malicious? A malicious actor comes in and poisons the model, and now the AI model is now sending 10 times the amount and siphoning 90% of it over to this other malicious actor. And this is definitely a risk. This is without a doubt a risk. And I think I'm sure you'll agree with me with this with your sort of cyber background, is that when the internet came around, there's risks. Cyber wasn't even a thing prior to even in the early 2000s, people weren't really talking about cyber. But with the advent of the internet and everything now being on a network and communicating publicly, this adds a whole new surface area, a whole new vector of attack. And I think we're going to see something similar to the advent of the internet with the risk of cyber threats to a new surface area that can be attacked on using AI. And actually, that's something which it's not covered in these slides, but something which Hedera are doing a lot is a lot on how can we use blockchain for that data integrity aspect and for that data provenance, using on-chain data, using the attributes of public ledger, of transparency, immutability, and traceability to start training models on there, or doing the process of building AI models to then be able to pinpoint, has there been a malicious poisoning attack? Can we then revert that state? So that's something which AI companies like Equity Labs and Prove AI, I can send links to them, are using Hedera for. But to answer your question, how do we sort of mitigate the risk of potential model hallucination, which says, okay, you've asked for 10 HBAR, I'm going to send 1,000. What we're seeing for these use cases, we're using AI agents to improve that user experience, have a chatbot interface to potentially do some complex decentralized exchange protocol executions, but there's a human in the loop. So the AI agent will generate the transaction. It will create all of the relevant, okay, user comes along and says, I've got 1,000 USDC, find me the best way to put this crypto to work. And the AI might then go, you might have an AI agent which searches different protocols, different yields, then might go, okay, right, now you can borrow over here and then you can deploy liquidity over here. Do you want me to do this? And then it will come back to you, and there's that human in the loop aspect where only once the human has clicked approve will it actually sign the transaction and start executing those swaps. So that's the current mitigation. Is it perfect? No, humans will definitely click approve without thoroughly checking the transaction and whatever. But it's a means, at least for now, which is that sort of intermediary intermediary safety solution. Sarah? Are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry. I have a question for you because you know, the idea of having autonomous agent, like, you know, what is the law that applies to him? Because a little bit of what Nino was just brought up, one of my problems in agentic systems is that ideally they would abide to the law of agency and be bounded by this agreement that exists between the user and the agent itself.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to the terms and condition because as agents themselves have been trained with the data or on, you know, by someone else, in this case, the Hedera, you know, engine. And so where does the responsibility and the liability falls if something goes wrong? Because, you know, ideally I could ask my agent, you know, go refurbish my fridge and everything that is in it with using my coins, and then it goes on an Amazon incredible spree and not only, you know, uses all my coins but borrows other coins, and now I have a debt situation, right? So what is my recourse then
Oof. I mean,
on that case?
so you said you were a lawyer, didn't you? Did I hear that? Yeah, I'm just a techie. I build the problems. It's up for the. I think I definitely don't have the answer to that. But I can imagine it's a big sticking point for the regulators at the moment. And I have been following quite closely what, for example, the SEC are saying when it comes to sort of financial institutes using AI. This is for even Web 2 and Web 3, and what I think in medicine, the FDA, what in the UK, in Europe, and with the EU, and all of its focus around this responsible AI and being able to understand why an AI agent or just any AI system made the decision it did. And it's definitely a messy problem where, I mean, we're at a point now, these supposedly they're going to keep on getting better, but even now AI is really impressive. It's really, really good. So yeah, how we're going to manage the risks, that's not definitely something that I have the answer to here. But I think it's really important to flag up, because these are things which, when you're building, let's say you're here and you're having ideas. I want to build I want to build an AI agent. If you want to make it production ready and actually have other people using it, you will need to have these conditions. You need to have these considerations in place, because let's say your product blows up in 5 years' time. If you're not doing it and something's dodgy, you're going to get fined when the regulation is clear. And we saw this in crypto. Where you have this sort of innovation and there's this wild west of initial coin offerings and whatever, and there's no regulation, but then the regulation comes in and they backtrack and they go, okay, you did this 2 years ago, hand it over. So it's definitely really important to flag up. Paul just asked a really good question. Would this fall under building proper guardrails? Totally. That, without a doubt, building guardrails to prevent the AI agent from going crazy and borrowing loads of money, that's definitely a solution. But even still, I think the consideration is, what if the guardrails go wrong? And from the compliance perspective, this will be really important to think about, and you need to understand, why has it gone wrong? What are the mitigations in place? But yeah, that's again, I'm going to be whizzing through what you can do, how you do it, and the implementations of it is obviously, I guess we're still learning, because it's still very, very premature. And to the best of my knowledge, that there's probably not been there's not really big examples of catastrophes yet, but we are really quite at the beginning of this AI being increasingly used. And I'm sure we'll see stuff in the news in the next few years about some AI disaster, black swan event. Nino, I saw you went on unmute. Anything to ask?
Yeah,
Oh,
Nino.
no, I was just going to say thank you for the
Okay.
answer. Again, how we use AI in our company is very, very different. We don't let it automate things.
Right.
Many things, like the handling of the wallets, and we use queries and basically
Yeah.
get requests and whatnot
So
to
human in the
manage what
loop,
it can
right?
and can't do. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that like a human in the loop, humans sort of verifying it and
No, actually, we have just very well-defined processes that if there is a specific event that happens,
right?
then the wallets can be handled by our services that we have running on our
Got
server.
you. Okay.
And then but that event has to trigger, and the AI can't really trigger those events,
Got
but
you,
it can be
yeah,
used in other things. So
yeah.
there is a human kind of in the loop, because
Before.
like we reward our students depending on how well they answer a question correctly, right? And then there's a
Right.
trigger event that happens when they answer that question.
Yeah.
But the AI, it deals with like generating content and grading quizzes and things like that. It doesn't really, it's not in the loop of handling the cache, but there are services that are automated to do that for us.
Yeah.
So we're still leveraging AI. We're still getting the best of that interaction with students, but
Totally.
the students themselves are the ones that are triggering those events to
And
get
it's
money
in
and
your
get paid.
controlled environment.
But
Correct.
Nino, sorry, I have a question for you. But you know that AI is simulative, right? So stochastic. So when does it that the AI agent actually works, it becomes like pro student? Because they learn where the student does well, and they could see where they're doing well, and then keep on reinforcing what that thing, instead of catching where they do it wrong. So do you
I come up
have
with the
guardrails?
ideas, and then the developer handles that part.
Right. But it's important that we have this conversation, because the worst thing that, the AI agents wants to please us, right? That's the whole idea.
So again, it's like I know that we deal with like averages, and there's math that goes into that. I mean, I know algebra. That's about where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I know
Yeah,
that
it's behavioral though, right? They get to know
it's
who you are, and they get
it's
to please you. And so
but
for
it's
students, that's the
not.
worst. You actually want to have a bad, you want to have a tough teacher, because the idea is that you want the students to learn, and the test is the
Correct.
time where they can either test themselves on their
We
knowledge, not
have
just give them a high
huge.
five.
We're not individual. Like the AI is not going to be doing student to student interaction like that. It's going to be it's more like class as a whole, averages, and these test questions on average are failing students. So we either modify the content to teach it better, or just give them different questions. So, or define the question better, or a human would go into that point and be like, what is going on? So there is some interaction, but again, we're still building it. It's still new for us. This is a whole like platform that we haven't released yet. So there are questions that need to be asked, but again, very defined lines. I'm like, hey, it'd be cool if we had this. My developer is like, yeah, we'll figure out how we can do that. And then they end up doing it, whatever they do. And then when they explain how they did it, I'm like, okay, well, there's problems with this thought, or there's problems with that. And then obviously we make mistakes. But again, going back to Hedera, I don't want to take too much of your time. We just separate the AI portion and the interaction portion from the actual interactions that trigger payments.
Yeah. Thanks, man. So do you know what? I think actually it's because what we're talking about is so relevant and it's so important. And actually AI is just totally beyond the scope of only Web3. As we all know, Nino was just giving a really great example of using AI to essentially improve internal business efficiency, business optimization. So I know for a fact I'm not going to get through the rest of this slide. I will quickly zip through it, but I do actually want to tie into something which I'm doing here at Hashgraph when it comes to this internal Web2 AI automation, just because I think it'd be really good for you to see how you can build it. And I think more interestingly, it's been done totally low code, no code, which is probably quite appealing for a lot of people. So I'll quickly zip through the rest of the slide. We've got AI agent support. We've got support for AI agent frameworks like LangChain, ELIZA. We've also got this really interesting HIP, which I'm not going to go into. HCS 10, this is a standard that came out for interagent communication, allowing agents to communicate with each other autonomously in a decentralized way. That I could speak about that for hours, but I'm not going to, because it's also quite technical. And there's another one, which is we have an AI agent hackathon, which is starting on the 11th of February. Sorry, 11th. Wow. Starting on the 11th of April. If you're interested, head over to the Hedera Twitter or the hedera.com. I can also drop it in the link. I can drop it in the chat. But definitely sign up. We'd love to have some of your ideas. Now, because I need to go soon, but I do want to. I've been sort of inspired to share the continue this sort of AI specific conversation, and I want to just show like a particular AI flow, which is very similar to what Nino was describing. sort of an event-driven architecture, where this is something which even the non-technical people can definitely do, because it's done totally with low code, no code solutions. And let me, okay, sorry, I need to authenticate myself. And essentially, it's done with Zapier. So if you don't know what Zapier is, Zapier is a common low-code, no-code tool. You can also use tools like NA10. NA10 is open source, so it's actually free. And basically what this does is it automates and it accomplishes a really large portion of this regular workflow, regular business process that I and a few other business colleagues of mine take part in. So every week or so, or every 2 weeks, the Hedera adds a new Hedera upgrades its underlying protocol with these things called HIPs, Hedera Improvement Proposals. And obviously these HIPs need to be communicated to the audience there. So we need to do developer content. If it's a technical tutorial, we need to write blog posts. So essentially what I built is a flow which goes from a Zoom meeting, because typically the new HIP is communicated in a meeting somewhere. And we've got Zoom AI to transcribe and summarize that meeting. When that meeting ends, it will automatically trigger this flow. So as soon as we have I piloted it a couple days ago with a colleague of mine. The Zoom meeting will be triggered. We'll be talking about that Zoom meeting is specific. We're going to be focusing on talking about new video content we can create, code tutorials and blog posts. And then it will essentially create a summary, trigger this Zoom workflow, so that in this particular Zapier workflow, we have the meeting summary. It will extract the HIP number that we were talking about. So in the recent case, HIP 1084. And then it will use that to get the documentation from GitHub, which has all of the relevant context. So at that point, this Zapier flow has the ability it's got the context of the Zoom meeting summary, and it's got the context of the HIP documentation. Then it's going to create a channel message in Slack just to say, look, I've started the processing, wait and see what we create. It then splits off into a generate video structure path and generate blog post path. And here it then, so again, it's got the meeting summary, it's got the HIP documentation, and then over here it's being transferred to our dedicated AI LLM engine, where we've got really thorough prompts which take the documentation, takes the meeting summary, and it then generates it then generates the meeting. It generates the video structure. So this is something that would usually take maybe a few hours or something on my side. It generates the video structure, adds it into a Google document, and then it also sends me a message. So it says, Jake, the Google document with the video idea is made. That video structure is a hook. It's what to cover in the introduction, what branding assets to use, basically everything that just I can look at and go, okay, right, get straight to recording the video. It will also create social media content for the posts that go out about this particular video. And it will also create design tickets for the design team who can then start going, okay, here's the video title, this is the thumbnail that I need. And it will do a similar thing over here with the generate blog post. It takes that context, passes it back over to our AI platform, which has all of the prompts, has all of the specific instructions, and then it will generate the blog draft, and then it's going to alert my colleague who does the blog post. And the really important thing here is, again, it's not AI just posting straight to the internet. It's AI creating 80% of the job and us humans doing the remaining 20%, but saving a lot of time in the process. This was all done. I mean, typically this process from start to end, and when I say start to end, I'm talking about from that initial conversation to when the content has been uploaded and the media has been, the Twitter posts and the LinkedIn posts have been uploaded. That typically takes about 2 weeks, because there's so many people to communicate, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of other stuff going on, a lot of back-to-back meetings, as anyone who's working will totally agree with. This here, we did a 20-minute meeting focused on getting this out. 2 minutes later, all of this was generated into a form which is immediately actionable, and we're probably going to be saving about a week and a half now. I'm quite confident that it's going to be saving a lot of time. So again, it was all done using low code stuff. The reason why I wanted to share this is it's not sort of Web3 related at all, but just maybe to give a bit of inspiration as to what you actually can do. You could also maybe link in some Web3 flows over here as well. But yeah, I thought that might be interesting. So I need to shoot off. I'm going to answer some of the questions. I saw there's some specific ones on AI, sorry, on Hedera and AI. So Cyril said, if I got an LLM and decided to train this with just a 1,000-page book, will I be able to chat with this LLM-based book on what it has learned from the book? So what you're talking about is fine-tuning, where you get an existing base LLM like OpenAI, or you get maybe an open source one like Llama from Meta, and then you can use that. You can use the existing data to fine tune it. That's a relatively expensive process, and probably not the way that you should go around learning from the book. What you could do as an alternative is you could do something what's called you could convert the book into a AI readable format using vector embeddings, and you can then add this 1,000-page book into a vector database. Then the AI is able to query basically what happens is whenever you ask a question, you've got a prompt. A machine learning model will convert that prompt into an embedding, which is just basically numbers. It will convert it into an embedding, then it goes to the vector database, which has all of the book as an embedding, and it can go, which of these is the most similar? And it will get the pieces of context which are most similar and then add it into the LLM window. So the context has the book in its memory. It sort of has it as part of it has the relevant part of the book in its context, and it will then be able to give you a response which is specific to the book and grounded in a trustworthy source. That would probably be the recommended way, but you could also fine tune it. If you were to train a model from scratch with a 1,000-page book, you'd get nothing. I mean, the size of data that is needed for these large language models is 1,000-page books times by 1,000 times by 1,000 times by 100 whatever billion trillion gazillion. You need a lot of data and a lot of energy and a lot of compute power, and like billions of dollars to train anything which is useful. The final one, Abdurrahman, what role does Hedera play in central bank digital currencies? So same from the technology perspective, same really as any blockchain. They have a technology which can be used for CBDCs because all a CBDC is just a token. So any blockchain which has the ability to create a token can technically qualify as a CBDC, assuming it's permissioned in a way where a central bank would be happy. So Hedera can play just the technology layer, but specifically more in terms of what's Hedera currently doing with CBDCs. Hedera has quite an interesting governing structure, governing council, where it's unlike other blockchains. It's not a permissionless blockchain. It's actually a permissioned, meaning it's not just everyone can come along and create a node and start being a validator on the network. Only specific entities can be the node validators. And those entities at the moment are companies like Google, IBM, Dell, Mondelez, LSE, UCL, loads of universities and top companies. And some of those companies, some of those entities are central banks. So there's a bank really big bank in Africa. Standard Bank, is Standard Bank quite a big bank in Africa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So Standard Bank is on the governing council, as is Shinhan Bank, which is a really big bank I think the biggest bank in South Korea. They did a pilot using Hedera technology for cross-border remittances and sort of stable coins. So there are people who have sort of piloted it, but again, this is I think if we do see CBDCs, it's probably going to be in the next 1 to 5 years or something like that. I know Europe are sort of the EU are talking about it quite a lot now, and I'm sure there are conversations way above my pay grade about how can we be the ledger of choice. But essentially, we've done a lot of work. Ghana, actually, the Central Bank of Ghana was looking at doing a stable coin on Hedera. They didn't in the end. Standard Chartered Bank, yes, that's correct. They didn't use Hedera in the end. They used a private ledger. But there's been quite a few conversations, and I'm happy to sort of drop some links to interesting resources. And what I'll do is I'll send them to you, Brian, and then if you could just share them to your team about
No
stablecoins
worries.
and Hedera.
No worries at all. Jake, I know you have to rush out. No worries. So,
There's another. So Getson just said also NSE is one of the Hedera council members. That is correct. So actually, NSE, the Nairobi Stock Exchange, they're the most recent person to have joined the governing council. I've been leading a hackathon in Kenya, which is happening right now. So the deadline, it started on Monday. The deadline is Tuesday. I can send the link to that if you're interested in signing up. We're actually working with the NSC. I've got a call with their CEO next week to establish a incubator. And how can we go from the hackathon, which we're currently doing, the top digital asset, the top digital asset capital market solutions, how can we work with Hedera and NSE to create an incubator of sorts, which allows these products to actually go from just being an idea in a hackathon to something which is regulatory compliant, something that can legally be operating inside of the market? How can we help lobby and shape regulation, digital asset regulation, to that regard? So that's something which is really exciting. And I thought I just wanted to share that. I'm also going to be in Kenya, definitely I fly to Kenya in about 2 weeks on Wednesday.
yeah, you said in April.
Yeah, have you shared that around because there's a big 12th of April.
April, yeah.
I'm going to be University of Nairobi. We're going to be doing it's going to be sort of the celebration of the hackathon. The top 5 projects or so are going to be pitching to a panel of judges. We've got NSE are going to be giving a talk. Hedera is going to be giving a talk, and then an entity based in Kenya who work a lot in digital asset lobbying called the Virtual Assets Chamber. They're also going to be giving a talk. There's going to be food, there's going to be swag, there's going to be loads of networking stuff. It'd be really awesome. And then also the top projects will pitch their project to a panel of judges. So that's going to be a really interesting event. If you're in Kenya, definitely definitely come along and chat with Brian about those resources to sign up.
Jake, you definitely need to link up with Paul when you're in Kenya. Yo, Paul, when Jake is in Kenya, just make a point. That's on the 11 thereabouts. I'll link you guys on WhatsApp as well, or you can link up on LinkedIn, however you want to do it. But just make sure you have a conversation. Jake will further the discussions.
Awesome, man.
We got to push this forward.
Let's push it, bro. Let's push it, and there's hopefully much more to come.
All right, cool. So, bless you, Jake. Thank you very much. Bless you. If anybody has further questions for Jake, you know where to find him on his LinkedIn page, Jake Hall. And shoot him a message. I'm going to keep you guys in the group posted about the Hedera stuff. You remember, I've been asking about devs and taking your details to forward that on to Jake for the hackathon thing. So the opportunities are there, but preparation meets opportunity. Please, you snooze, you lose.
Definitely.
Now, speaking about money and opportunities, we want to hand over to Sarah Adami Johnson.
Brian, so listen, I can't see if anybody, I can't see the chat for whatever reason. I can't get to it, so I apologize. But Brian, you're gonna be my chat master.
Okay.
So if anybody has a question,
when questions come in,
interrupt me. Yeah. So today's Friday, right? Today's Friday, and it's the end of the first week, I understand, of this amazing program. So I thought that before we start going into death and taxes, maybe I could give you a quick summary, possibly, of everything that you guys have learned, so that we're going to basically recap the world, the universe of the digital assets, just so that everything is clear. Because the last, Jake was amazing, but when we started talking about agentic or synthetic systems, we're like in the super sophisticated world. So maybe we can bring it down a notch to bring it back up at the end. So with that in mind, generally when we talk about digital assets, we really go through a process. So a process of discovery and implementation to be brilliant. And every time you get lost, so if this is going to feel sometimes like you're really climbing Mount Everest, you can't breathe, it's really heavy walking, you just have to think that the idea here is not to get to the top, it's not to to get to the flag. The idea is to come back home, alive every day. So as long as you pick out of this amazing, week of lecture, you have one nugget or a couple of them of insights over digital assets, well, you're a winner, right? You're a winner, you made it. And you're successful. Because if you try to understand and learn everything at once, it's gonna be difficult. So with that in mind, that the idea is really to get a couple of aha moments, I'm going to step back and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what the universe and how do you categorize assets in such universe. And I'm going to do it from the perspective that I know, which is like a legal perspective, right? How do we categorize these assets? What are they? So the first category, so the assets could be categorized in 4 big buckets. The first bucket is tangible assets. So every time you talk about the digital universe, what's tangible in that digital universe? Well, your own computer, right? Your own box that you use every day to do this amazing code. That's a digital asset, but it just happens to be a tangible digital asset. Your phone, your Alexa, your smart VR, Facebook or Meta glasses, your translator, your Google Translator that now you can wear. All of those wearables and all of those assets, such as the computer, your iPad, all of those things, and your phone are digital, but they are tangible. They're capital property and they're personal capital property and they're tangible property. Then the second category is of intangible property, what we define as software or electronic records. These things are your email, your websites, your anything, your online banking system, anything that is kind of data related to your website, your social media accounts, your LinkedIn account, your Meta, your Etsy marketplace, your eBay, all of those website based on apps, all of these things are intangible or software based. Then we have a third category, which I call it the incorporeal assets, which traditionally, we'll see your IP, so your copyrights, your patents, anything that has to do with, traditional intellectual property. But specifically for digital assets, here's where we find crypto and blockchain assets. So here we will find your cryptocurrencies, your fungible tokens. We'll find your non-fungible tokens. So, your collectibles, for example. You'll find the DAO tokens, so the distributed autonomous organizations that you might belong to. The distributed social media accounts such as Dracula token, and then your soulbound tokens, anything that has to do with tokenized reality. And the reason why it's in this incorporeal part is that they're not quite just so software and they're not definitely tangible, but they're smart. Why? Because they can actually self-execute. So in this, I said there are 4, we just covered 3. So there is another category, which is AI. AI stands on its own and is considered a mixed advanced technology because to function, AI, artificial intelligence, needs a computer, so it needs hardware, tangible property and a really sophisticated algorithm or software. So it stands right in between. And when I, explain this to either my students or my clients, is like, think of our own human intelligence. When we define human intelligence, we need a body that has senses, that perceives information, and a brain, what's inside there, that, synthesize this information, transform what are this perception that we get from the outside into information that we can use to resolve problems. That's human intelligence. The same thing for AI, even though it's slightly different, because there is no AGI yet, but we have a computer in which there is a sophisticated LLM or LCM, depending if it's language-based or conceptual-based algorithm that that's why it's called a transformer, that transforms data that it has been trained on into new information. So that's the realm, that's the backdrop. Now, if we dive a little deeper, then let's look at blockchain, because you spent a week talking about blockchain. So what is blockchain? The best way that I can explain blockchain is really, it's a ledger, right? So it's a financial accounting system. It keeps track of information that gets added and information that gets detracted. So for example, when it was born, the traditional ledger back in, the times of the Pharaoh sent out, its own little agents, and the agents went to the little villages and they taxed people, right? So they were taking grain or other goods out of these villages, and they had tablets. And on these tablets, they were like village number A minus 10, boxes of grain. And the Pharaoh on the other side of the coin had plus 10, right? This tablet was the ledger, and it was a financial ledger. And at the end of the day, the number of all the grains that was collected and the number of what was actually deducted had to balance. Well, the blockchain is similar, but what it counts and what it's, keeping track of is digital assets transactions, and specifically crypto assets transactions. So the blockchain is a memorialized financial tool that is public, transparent, open, generally decentralized. So there is no Pharaoh to which, you return the tablet every day. Everyone and every computer in the network owns the ledger of the tablets and is permissionless. You don't have a Pharaoh that decides who's coming in and goes out, but anyone with a computer can download the software and start playing, right? And start modifying it. So that's a blockchain. So if you have to think of how the blockchain works, well, it has rails. So it has crypto, and generally a currency crypto, upon which a train goes around. Every minute or so, and every so many seconds or so, there is a new compartment that is attached at the very end of the train, and that's a block. Inside the block, there is information. There are tokens, there are data. Now, to get data onto the train, what you need to do, you need to buy a ticket, right? So you need to pay a gas fee. So you pay the gas fee, you get to put the data in the compartment, and once the compartment is full of data, boom, it gets attached to the rest of the train. And the train never stops, it keeps on going around. Now, inside the train, what type of data can you get? Well, it could be either fungible data, so fungible tokens, cryptocurrency, CBDC, you name it, anything that you and I can hold at the same time. So for example, a fungible token could be representing a car, a building, a chair, a cat, anything that is fungible, a dollar bill, a Bitcoin. That's a fungible token. Or the assets in the train could be non-fungible or unique. So in this case would be my car, which is a Mini Cooper. So Sarah's a Mini Cooper. Or it could be my cat, Milo, right? It could be my dog, Bendico. It could be anything that is non-fungible. Either I own it in one moment or you own it. We cannot own it at the same time. Okay, those are non-fungible tokens. So depending on the nature of this token, you have, different characteristics of the token themselves. So if it's a fungible token, generally it's a cryptocurrency token, Hedera token, Solana token, you name it. Each train has its own rail or a payment rail represented by a currency token, which is what you need to functionally upload the information on the blockchain, on the ledger. It could be, a stable coin, and the difference between a regular, for example, a Bitcoin blockchain or an Ethereum blockchain and a stable coin, it's really in the name. Once is volatile, the value of this coin is represented by many different external and internal factors, or it could be stable, right? There is a framework of reference that decides the value. So for example, Tether and USDC, that is $1 per one token, right? So what the value of that token is at any point in time. There are more sophisticated stable coins which are more difficult to explain. There are algorithmic stable coins. There are stable coins that have a reference instead of having another currency as a reference, it has underlying commodities, so gold or copper or oranges, you name it. But it's the value of the reference of the coin that will determine the value of the stable coin. And then and all of these coins are part of what we call the DeFi or decentralized system. There is also fungible token that belong to CeFi or centralized system, and that would be your CBDC, so the central bank digital currency. There is a central bank, the Pharaoh, there is a central bank, so it is centralized, but it's still digital, right? And it still is a blockchain. So that is the fungible token world. Then there are non-fungible token world. This is where unique assets are transacted and represented. So we know that fungible tokens are also smart contracts. So now I'm going to give you a tip. Every time you hear the word smart contract, please substitute to the word smart the word self-executing or automatically executing. And to the word contract, use the word program. An NFT is a self-executing program. It's not an agreement in itself. It may represent an agreement, but it's not an agreement. It's the enforcer, is the tool that we use to have certain agreements between people to be automatically executed. So for example, I can code, and the language that I use to code smart contract is Solidity. I can have my code, my Solidity code, and I can ask the system to function in this manner. If I receive 10 Bitcoin, then I transfer the ownership of my Mini Cooper to whoever paid me that. So the smart contract really works like a vending machine. If you put the token in, boom, you get whatever you selected out, right? So the contract itself, the program, is just code. What's underneath the code, what's embedded either on-chain into the code or off-chain by way of a JSON link. So my code could have a blue line that if I click on, because I uploaded it, it will bring me up the assets that is being transacted. So a picture of my Mini Cooper and possibly, if I got good advice, a picture of the file of the contract for the sale of my Mini Cooper, in which there are applicable laws for the contract. There is a description of the assets and, how many kilometers it has and all this other stuff. Now, this beautiful metadata, the data referring to the asset that is being exchanged, is incorporated into my smart contract, into my code via a JSON file. Okay? So please, one of the things that you remember is that when we talk about art and NFTs, the NFT itself is not the art. It may have art embedded into the code. So it may have a picture of my CryptoPunk as a part of the code on chain, or it might have a JSON file that links that picture, points to use the right language, to the asset that is saved on a different server. But in itself, the NFT is just a piece of code that allows for self executing transactions when certain terms and a certain environment has been completed. So money paid, exact amount of money paid within a time frame that I request into my code. So now that we know all of that, it should be easy, right? So now blockchain, what it is, what are these chains of blocks all chained together where there are data repositories, right? And once my information in my transaction is uploaded in the blockchain, ideally it stays there. And guess what? It's open. You know, I can go back and see all the transaction related to my, Mini Cooper since the first time that I minted an NFT about my Mini Cooper. It's transparent, it's open. Now, what is not open and not transparent is whoever owns that Mini Cooper, right? Because I'm in the blockchain, whatever you can see is just my public key, is just my, pseudonymous representation of who I am, but it doesn't say, oh, Sarah Johnson owns that asset. So there is more work, more forensic work that needs to be done to actually get from, oh yes, I can see all the transaction about, that happens into that, wallet, to who, who's the owner of that wallet. And then brings up a really good point, which is, please be very physicious about inventory. How do you own these assets, right? It's very, very important, and this will become more apparent when we talk about death, but there is a very big difference in law if you own these assets in your own name. And when I talk about these assets, is really the wallet or the public, the public line that you see. If you own it just in your single name, or if you own it jointly, or if you own it in your business for your Web3, or if you own it in a trust. So remember, that is a really big, important deal. Now that we know then what we could be owning on the blockchain, let's talk about how do you access it. Because at the end of the day, you could have all sorts of coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ethera, you can own all these beautiful collectibles, NFTs, you can own pieces, of land in the metaverse, NFTs, but really, where do they exist and how do you access them? Well, you access them through a wallet, right? This wallet is actually an address. It's an address that allows the owner of these assets to see them and to access and to transact them. These wallets could be hot wallet or warm wallet and cold wallet. So you can have a depository for these assets that could be online at an exchange, so they're custodied at an exchange, or that you own in your pocket through a Tether, for example, like a hardware, again, hardware assets, which is a USB, for example, right? And to open either your Tether or to get access to your online depository account or custodial account, you need a password, right? A PIN number, a password. So that password is your private key or a seed phrase, right? The private key has 42 digit, which is the numbers and letters in a specific sequence. And a seed phrase is 12, words in random sequence. So that private key related to that address is the most important asset that you have, because without it, you cannot actually access and transact all the universe of beautiful digital assets that you have. So now that you know that, and you're like brilliant at those basics, because those are really the basic components of digital asset, you have to understand that it doesn't matter that you know this in your head, you actually have to keep an inventory, because if something happens to you, yeah, reading your mind once you're passed away, it's really, really difficult. I mean, you have to be a super special medium here. So you have to write it down. You need to start having what I call an hygiene of digital assets via a smart inventory. And when I say smart inventory, I mean an inventory that is complete, detailed, and with multiple backups. Because if you have this wonderful inventory in your phone and you use the password to your phone, or it gets locked down, or you use the phone itself, well, and you didn't back it up on a cloud storage, for example, then how are you going to get to that inventory? You can't. So pen and paper is kind of like counterproductive and counterintuitive in many ways, but pen and paper. And be very, very detailed. Some digital assets may have what I called multiple layers of exposure. So think about your Amazon account. Your Amazon account is its own online digital assets that has a financial component, which is a link to multiple credit cards that you might have. The credit cards that you might have may belong to banks or private credit card companies that have their own online presence, right? So be very careful and very detailed in putting all this together. For cryptocurrencies, do you have multiple wallets? Do you have online wallets or custodial wallets or hot wallets and cold wallets? Maybe you keep your Bitcoin in a cold wallet, but you keep your Hedera and your Solana and your Algorand in a Coinbase warm wallet, right, at the exchange. You may keep all your, ordinals into a cold wallet. And ordinals are Bitcoin that are inscribed, so they have information directly on chain regarding, unique assets. So you can distinguish ordinals by their code. They look exactly like any other Bitcoin. So the only way to keep them safe and for you not to spend them is to really have them into a separate wallet, right? So you might have a separate wallet for your ordinals while you have your other Bitcoin, in an exchange or in another separate cold wallet. So be very specific, very detailed, and please, 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 not just online software-based solution, even though there are some that are better than others. There is nothing wrong in having pen and paper. Now, as it pertains to the ownership, I'm going to go back here. Also note the ownership of these assets. There is a very big difference if something was to happen to you and you own this asset jointly with right of survivorship directly with your spouse or with your children or with your friends, because the ownership of that asset automatically will go to them, right? Legally, they will own it automatically. So they will bypass probate. They will bypass, the state law, and automatically the successor will own it. There still may be inheritance taxes depending on your jurisdiction if it's not your spouse and there is a marital deduction for them. But good hygiene, right? At least you need to make a decision. Make a decision. How do you want to own these assets? Do you want to own it with your children? Do you want to own it with your spouse? Do you want to keep it just for yourself? Right? And what are the marital consequences? And, Brian is an expert on that. But if, God forbid, the spouse dies or divorces you or leaves you or, have multiple families, what happens to those assets? Do you have a claim to 50% of it, or do you have a claim to 100% of it? So ownership title is very, very important. If you don't know how you own it, you should make a decision. So if you have opened a custodial account just in your name, because, for example, exchanges do not allow for joint accounts, then go to see your expert lawyer, go to see Brian, and ask him to make a deed of ownership, or whoever is the lawyer competent in your jurisdiction, and ask you to make him a formalized deed of ownership or a deed of agency, whether it's clear that you might own these assets either as a trustee for somebody else or jointly or in your business account, you name it. But clarity and documentation, evidentiary, hard documentation about how you own these assets is very, very important. After the ownership, note where the assets are. Where do you keep your private key? And again, you want to keep this information confidential, right? You don't want to start telling everybody that, oh, I have my private key in my safety deposit box, outside in my garden, right? No, You want to keep it secret, but you need to note it somewhere. Because if something happens to you, again, your executor, without knowing where and those private keys are, they cannot get it. And be careful if you have your private key written on a piece of paper, for example, and you keep this piece of paper in a safe, because if there is a fire and the safe is not fire resistant, that will go up in flames, literally. So maybe your private key and your seed phrases should be actually engraved in fire resistant metals such as copper, platinum, or gold. Especially if you have a lot of coins or coins that might go up in value in the future, you want to protect that against environmental, damage. And think very, facetiously and exhaustively about what that environmental issue may be. Because, the environment is going a little bit crazy nowadays. And lastly, not least, document your wishes. What is it that you want to do with these assets if and when you were to pass away or lose capacity? Let's say you have land in the metaverse. You own a home right next to Snoop Dogg in the metaverse, and you have an NFT that represent that. Should you keep on renting it after you pass? So that is your heirs, right? Your heirs should know that you have land in the metaverse and should know what to do with it. Should they be staking those coins? So should they be hiring agentic systems that automatically find out the best way to make your coins work for you? Are there any limitations of what can be done with these digital assets after you pass? Is there absolute none things that you want to be done? For example, do you want your heir to upload your name, your image, your selfies into a ghost bot, right? So that your spouse or your children can keep on talking to you in your synthetic persona after you have passed away? Is that desirable to you? Is it something that you want to do or not, right? You have to write it down. You have to have a conversation with your loved one. You have to kind of, open the kimono, so to speak, and really have intelligent and well-informed conversation of what your wishes are. After all, they are your money. I speak with very passionate Bitcoin owner that see this as, the Armageddon, save of the day kind of assets, and they will never sell it. And then I see they die, and the first thing that the heirs will do is go out and sell it because they don't want it, they don't understand it, they're afraid of the volatility, they don't have a long-term plan, and they didn't know that that was the plan of the, original owner of the original Gangster. They didn't know that because they never really talk about it. And so, believe it or not, they, the fact that they sold it basically frustrated the entire idea of owning these assets in first place as the origin. So if you have strong feelings about your digital assets, talk to your loved one, or at least leave detailed instruction if you don't want to talk to them because you don't want them, to know that you have these assets. There is a lot of judgment still out there about owning digital assets, especially certain digital assets, if they're popular or they're popular for the wrong reasons, and you don't want to tell people that you have it. Write it down. Make sure that there is a robust estate planning plan that you have executed, that is out there, that can be found, that has, instruction that are not going against public policy in your country, and that is legal, and seek advice from the people that understand this space, they're passionate about this space, they are keeping up with the knowledge about this space, and maybe you become one of those. You become your own advocate and evangelist about the best practices and what you should be doing when you're thinking about digital assets and your own mortality. So with that, I'm
Wow.
gonna pause it.
Wow, as usual, dropping gems. You don't stop, Sarah. Hold up, Sarah. I just have to ask the students to unmute their mics and just tell Sarah, big up yourself. Like, guys, unless you have a black heart, you won't unmute your mic. You ain't a good person. Just unmute your mics and just tell Sarah, big up yourself.
Big up yourself, Sarah.
Big up yourself, Sarah.
Big up
You're
yourself.
gonna make me blush. You're gonna
Big up
make me
yourself,
stop it.
Sarah.
Stop it.
Big up yourself, Sarah.
Yo,
Big up yourself, Sarah. Big up yourself, Sarah.
you know what? Sarah always comes through. And okay, guys, let's mute because I can hear myself double now.
Pick up yourself, Sarah.
Big up yourself, everybody. Yo, Sarah, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, like that was so good. And hold up. Okay, Sarah, can you hear me now? All right, cool.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we have a mixed bag. We have we have newbies and we have devs and non-devs, industry people and all. And you know, like you've just brought it all together and demystified everything. And the comments here are wild, literally. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask anybody who has a question to unmute their mic and ask you their questions. And those who are shy to ask the questions via mic, they can type them down and then I'm gonna read them out to you. So
All right.
ever anybody, Nino, I think I saw your mic on. Did you have a comment or anything you wanted to say, Nino?
Nope. No. I'm just gonna wait.
All right, cool. Our Evan, anything? Palesa, anything? I see Mohammed is ready to ask a question.
No, go right ahead. Very good presentation.
All right, cool.
Hello.
Okay, who's speaking now? Please introduce yourself and where you're coming from.
My name is Mohammed Shaib.
Yeah,
I'm from Nigeria.
yeah.
I'm very impressed with the presentation of Miss Sarah, and she really did a wonderful job, especially with the analogy of explanation of the blockchain using the train. That was really comprehensible. I really love that. She really did a good job. And from my presentation, I was able to get a niche. I'm actually, I developed interest in digital asset management, and I would be glad if you can guide me on how to go about it. I've never knew there is anything like tangible digital asset. Well, at first, when someone talk about digital asset, I thought it's something intangible, something you cannot touch or see. They're all cryptocurrencies. I've never knew that there are our handsets and all that system constitute tangible assets. So I'm really interested in engaging in digital asset management, and if she can help me with maybe links to courses, free online courses or something that can be of help, I will be very happy with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. That's a great question. And, this is a question that I don't get very often, which is too bad, because if you think about it, the way that we interface with digital assets that are incorporeal or intangible is really through machines, right? It's really through the tangible that we actually use and interact with the intangible, such as our social media, accounts. So those are very important. Also, if you think about the tangible assets, so your Apple computer or your IBM computer, I don't know what you use, and please do not hate me for that. But if you think about your tablet or your computer or your phone, these assets themselves have terms and conditions that you sign on as soon as you buy them, right? And those terms and conditions, we never read them. I mean, I read them all, but most of the time we don't read them because they're kind of like the barrier that stands between us and the ability to actually use the computer, right? So we go through it very, very quickly. We press, I agree, okay, get on it, right? So those terms and conditions are actually very, very important, because most of the time they tell us what you can actually do with the asset, with the tangible or the intangible assets. So for example, your Apple computer will have terms and conditions that tells you, hey, please do not give your password to access this computer to anyone. So you can't give it to your mom. Like, let's say your mom wants to use your computer because she needs to look up something on Amazon. Well, you can open it up, right? Open up your computer, type up your password, and then let her use it, because you would have consented to her to use it, but you can't just give your password to your mom. So there are terms and conditions that you should know that potentially could make your loved ones in a breach of contract, in breach of terms, because you just never read it, right? They also explain what Apple or IBM or Google or Samsung can do with the data that you apply to the hardware, right? There are certain things that you might store on your desktop. That's not on the cloud, right? It's literally a document that you have in your desktop in your computer. There are files that are not backed up that you own on your computer. Well, those terms and conditions will tell you who owns that data, right? And if something happens to you, who can use it? And I'm not saying, this is not important. This is super important. What if you were writing a novel or a code, a revolutionary code for an agentic system that you hadn't backed up and it was just in your in your hardware, in your computer? Wouldn't that be important to know if you own that data and how to retrieve it if something happens to you? So I don't want to go into giving you the solution. I'm just saying this is a very important question that you raise, and management of this type of tangible assets have all those legal, ramification with it, right? I had people asking me, should we buy insurance for our digital assets? And I said, well, look at your house insurance and see if that house insurance is actually a rider specific for your computer, like your Alexa, right? Your actual Alexa's device, right? Or any other thing that you might have around your home. If you own a smart home, you might have devices, set up everywhere, smart TV, or if you own NFTs and you have special digital display of your NFT. Now you own the NFT in your wallet, but you have a digital actual hardware display for it with high pixels resolution. So is that covered by your insurance in your home if there is a fire or a flood or whatever, right? So all of these things are very important. Are there courses and stuff? No, I think you really need to, there are software solutions where this inventory, where you can actually upload on them, all your digital assets. One of the examples, and I'm honored to say that I know the lawyer that is the CEO of the company, is called eternalme.com, and they have amazing, digital assets inventory solution built into the system. But there are many, many other ones, right? So you might want to search out different ones, and Brian will be able to give you some ideas. But thank you for the question and to bring up this, because not many people really pause and reflects on the extent of their digital footprint.
Thanks, Sarah. There's another question, Paul Makolaka. Paul, you want to unmute yourself, please? And then we'll go to Abdul Rahman.
Yeah, my name is Paul Makolaka. I'm calling from Kenya. That presentation was amazing. I really loved it. It's already almost midnight here, but I mean, keeps us hot here. So my question is, especially when you look at, the OGs in terms of the cryptocurrency space, they were like, in terms of your digital assets, you don't want to, share your keys. I mean, like in terms of like, if you passed on, how you'd pass this on to the next, to their next of kin. So you find that over the years, there has been a lot of digital assets that have been, lost forever, because the keys, your next of kin probably didn't even know that you had these digital assets. So I think in your presentation, you have really brought up something that we really never talk about, especially in this space. And when it comes to, passing on your digital assets to your next of kin, just in case something happens. So I would really be interested to, to hear so much more about, how we can, start having this conversation and, what would be, the best, the best approach, and especially from, a legal perspective and, any other perspective. So I'd really be glad to hear more in terms of that. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, you nailed it, right? I mean, that's my life. Like I deal with death and taxes, and I see myself really as an advocate. This is why I feel so privileged that I'm here talking to you guys, because it seems like an oxymoron when you're talking about technology and you're talking about death, because technologies and the things that we use are very much for the living, right? You can actually purchase things, you can test things, you can do hackathon, only if you're alive, right? At least now. But the consequences, the ripple effects of owning such financially heavy value in these assets without really thinking about the ripple effect that could have onto your estate, and the risks of losing all of that wealth if you haven't done the proper planning are huge, right? They're huge risk. I called, mortality risk management, because if you think about it, planning for your death, planning for the uncontested succession of these assets, so that your kids do not start arguing about who gets the crypto, or who gets how much of the crypto, or if it goes all to the mom. There are specific laws. For example, Muslims have Sharia law where there are very strict type of succession that can happen, but you still have a portion that you are completely free to decide who's going to get that free portion that doesn't go through that specific law. Common law has its own intestacy laws, and the validity of gifting through a will, and public policies and all this other stuff. So absolutely important conversation. So there are different level of conversation, and none of those imply actually, divulging the secrecy of the keys, right? So one side is really understanding and being transparent with your family about the extent of your digital footprint and the extent of your financial wealth in crypto, for example, because there are assets that are digital that might not have any financial repercussion, but they have a high emotional value, your pictures, right? So being transparent and sharing that inventory of assets with your family, and then talk about the actual succession, which for crypto is who's going to have and when the keys, right? Who should have the keys? And if you have multiple children, should they each have a piece, so that not one just person, first of all, that one person loses it and then they lose everything, but also they kind of keep each other honest in the use of the wallet. You can have rules of engagement. I'm a big proponent of access guides where the patriarch, the OG, or the purchaser, mom and dad, decide, okay, these are the rules of engagement. This is an asset for the long term. Please, you only transact it when it's down market, for example. Buy more when it's down, not when it's going up. Don't ever sell it, or don't sell it at least for 10 years. Stake it or non-staking it, all this conversation. But again, you don't need to give them all the goods right away. You just need to let them know, hey, we have a plan from when we are passed on, and this plan, you can find it, we will let you know where you can find it, or you put the instructions, or where this access guide is with your will. You don't put the access guide with it, you just put, okay, this is where you find it, right? But all of this are really important conversation that, as much as 99% of the people do not read the terms and conditions of things that we use every day, 99% of the people do not think about their mortality and what will happen to the digital assets, with huge risk of not only losing value, but also creating all this, digital remains that are floating up in ether that nobody can claim, right? So I'll leave it at that, but thank you for the question, Paul, and for the observation. Very, very important.
Thank you, Sarah. There's another question from Abdullah Rahman Musa Inua. Abdullah Rahman, do you want to unmute yourself, please, and ask your question?
Yes, my name is Abraham Musa Inua from Nigeria.
Yes.
Regarding inheritance solution, and I want to know whether there is limitation in smart contract-based inheritance system.
Sorry, say that again. The last part.
I want to know whether there is limitation in smart contract-based inheritance system.
Oh, a limitation, Sarah, if there's a limitation in smart contract inheritance system. You're on mute.
I can unmute. Okay, so yeah, I know. Okay, so let me try to think how I'm gonna answer to that question in smart contracts. So you could have, so I don't know if you're asking me if you could actually have a smart contract that deploys automatically at your death and transfer your coins, or in this case would be your NFTs, directly at your death. That I believe they do exist. There are systems that do that, that actually automatically transfer your crypto and your collectibles. They are, I can't remember the name now of the actual thing, but I can research it for you. But there are out there. You just have to kind of Google it and see, you know, automatic, because it's code, right? So if you think about it, you know, you could code yourself an NFT that has an automatic kill switch to an heir, right? So that it has actually a program that says, okay, when you receive copies of the death certificate, or a specific input, then release the entire wallet, you know, balance to this other address, right? To this other wallet address. I can see that. I think they do. They're out there. They do exist. I would say, my word of caution would be, you know, the technology that we have today is the worst technology that we will ever have. Because in the future, tomorrow, there's going to be something else that is going to be better. And the chances is that we are now going to have a code, we're going to have an NFT thing. You know, what if the access to that specific blockchain gets cut out? You know, blockchains come up and they're alive and they die very quickly, right? So, you know, and just because Bitcoin has been out since 2008, you know, no one can ever promise you or guarantee you that it's going to be out there forever, right? But the same thing with Ethereum, and Ethereum would be the blockchain where you would use the NFT programming, because you can't do NFTs on Bitcoin. You could inscribe in ordinals, but they're not at the same extent. They're not NFT type quality of code, because it is a fungible token. You know, like Bitcoin is a pure fungible token. So, so to your question would be, yeah, there may be a way to code that automatic succession with a smart contract, with a self-executing program, but maybe it's such a nascent technology yet that there may be better solution in the future. Imagine instead, if you had a will that now is a digital asset, so you have a PDF that you have uploaded, you know, on an IPFS system, and then you will have an agent that you instruct to automatically transfer the property of your Bitcoin at your death. So in this case, you don't need a protocol, you don't need an NFT per se, but you can actually instruct a synthetic agent or an agentic system to pull that trigger, you know, to do that on your behalf. So things are evolving, and they're evolving really fast in this space. So I will say, let's see what happens. But yeah, there are already those crypto wills, you know, quote unquote crypto wills. I think it's called cryptowills.com or something like that, that actually will automatically, you know, has instruction to how to automatically pass this on. Now, it will pass it on to another wallet. So your heirs or your spouse will have to have a wallet already set up to accept the coins. So again, you know, there are multiple steps before you get to the end, but good questions.
Thanks, Sarah. There's a question here, probably you kind of touched on it, but I think an explanation would kind of help Lorna. So, is there a difference between smart contracts and NFTs? I think NFTs are smart contracts. So, you just want to help her understand.
Oh, that's a really good question. So non-fungible tokens are unique tokens that have embedded smart contract capabilities. That's what it is, right? So non-fungible tokens, so a token that has the characteristic of being unique or about a unique asset has smart contract capabilities. So it can be deployed out on the blockchain as an enforcer, an automatic enforcer of an underlying agreement, right? So again, NFT relates to unique assets. My Mini Cooper, my cat, Milo, my cat, my dog Bendigo, you know, it has to be related to a unique asset, but it has self-executing program capabilities built into the code. Because at the end of the day, it's just a token, and token is data, right? Token is data. Every time you hear the word token, is data. But there is smart data, so data that has the ability to self-execute because it has embedded commands that if this happens, then that happens. And then there is data that cannot, that doesn't have that capability, such as Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin doesn't have that capability, and Bitcoin is specifically fungible. So good question, and I hope I answered and I clarified.
Thanks, Sarah. Cyril, we're gonna take your question as the last question, but before then, I'm just gonna ask this question on behalf of Muhammad. So, are there any AI that can execute smart contracts? I mean, for those who don't have knowledge of programming or coding, Sarah. So,
Yeah, so I'm sure that there are. Why wouldn't there be? Because agentic system, agentic system do work in blockchain spaces. And again, a smart contract is just a self-executing system. What you could have is an agentic agent that controls or manage that self-executing. So input some of the information. So it could be added within that framework. I'm sure they do exist. There is a ton written by agentic agents and how agents work with the blockchain by MIT, MIT Blockchain Lab. They actually just published, maybe, you know what, Brian, I'm going to send you the last lecture that I saw on the capability of agentic system for law.
Okay.
And where's that space is evolving. So it is evolving space, and yeah, I see it, for example, imagine having a trust, like a data trust. So you're born, right? You get a social insurance number, you get an identification number for your from the government, and then at the same time you get a data trust that keeps that number protected, and then you have an agentic system trustee, you get an agent trustee for that data trust that manages it. So every time you need your social insurance number, your data trust agent trustee will fill it up, right, for whatever you need to do, like for your work paperwork, for your taxes, and things like that. So I see there is things in law, and even very old law, such as trust law, that are now being slowly, used and reframed with agentic system and smart tech.
And Sarah, just to chime in on that, especially when it comes to asset recovery as well, it's literally brought sexy back to like the area of trust law, because trust has been such a cold, dry subject that nobody wanted to look at it. But now, literally, with asset tracing, so let's say if your wallet is dissipated and somebody has bought a Ferrari or a painting, and the investigators are going tracing into the asset, they can go find that, get the value, derive the value of that asset, and sell it to give it back to the victim. However, in the laws of equity, there's somebody known as equity's darling. Okay.
Yes.
So this person, aka equity's darling, aka a bona fide purchaser for value without notice, once that asset goes into their hands, that thing is gone. You can never recover it, okay? So
Unless it's stolen. Unless it's stolen.
unless
Right?
it's stolen,
Because
or
unless it
unless,
was stolen.
but Sarah,
Because you could be
they
a
don't have
purchaser of
notice.
value.
If they
Yeah,
don't
no,
have
but you could be
notice,
the purchaser.
yeah,
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 but you can be the purchaser of value without notice, so without knowing that somebody else had it, right? So that you think it's real, it's non-clouded title.
exactly.
However, if the property was originally stolen, then you can never own it. You could in common law, that's for common law. In civil law jurisdiction, there is a 20-year statute of limitations. So
Right.
if you paid good money, you didn't know it was stolen, and you kept it, out, everybody knew that you had it, and nobody came to claim it for 20 years, then your title is cured and you actually now own it. But
Right.
if you're a purchaser of value without notice of a stolen good, and in common law, then you can never have it. And this is one of the sticky
So
point for Nazi looted
so
art,
so
right?
the Nemo that exception applies because you can't give what you don't have, essentially.
That's right.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely correct. Yes.
All
Good
right.
lawyering.
All right, cool. Thank you, Sarah. I see you. Cyril, you had your mic on. We need to finish this quickly so that we
Yeah.
jump over to Nino, and Sarah has been here for a while as well. Cyril, you ready?
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah. Sarah, brilliant work. I really enjoy the way you put things out and break things down. My question is still on smart contracts. When a contract is deployed, does it get copied into every single node in that blockchain?
Yes.
Such that when a function is called, then all the contracts in the node, they all get executed. That's what I wanted to understand.
Yeah, so good. Hi, Cyril, thank you. So the deployment is one, right? You have one contract, but the deployment is broadcasted throughout all the system, right? So the broadcast of that one NFT or that one program, I like to call it program. I hate that this techie I've used legal thing because it's confusing. So the program is deployed, it gets broadcasted throughout the entire system, but it's really one, right? And then depending on which blockchain we're talking about, there's going to be a verification system. So your protocol will kick in to verify the that it's valid transaction and the cryptographic keys, actually have worked like they had to work, and then it gets memorialized and uploaded to the blockchain, right? So what happens is the broadcasting is throughout the nodes of this specific contract and this specific transaction, right? And then the copy of everybody in the system, everybody in the node can actually see a residue of the transaction and evidence of that transaction because everybody has the ledger, but the entry is only done once, but everybody has a copy of that ledger, right? So the ledger it's copied and is available for viewing to everyone. The transaction are broadcasted to everyone once the protocol system, so if it's a proof of stake or a proof of work or a proof of personality, like in the WorldCoin world, once that has been verified and the transaction is actually uploaded, then it will be visible. It's a visible entry to everybody that has ability to see that system. How do you feel about that?
So, Cyril, you all right with that? Yeah, you've been answered?
Yes, I'm okay with this answer.
Thank you very much. So, guys, just, throw some fire emojis or some love hearts for Sarah and just, again, unmute your mics and just tell her, big up yourself to wish her a fantastic Friday. Yeah, so everybody, Paul, I know
you guys need a medal.
So
Big up yourself,
Big up
Sarah.
yourself,
big up
Sarah.
yourself, Sarah.
Big up yourself. Big up yourself. Big up yourself, Sarah. Big up yourself. Big up yourself. Big up yourself. Big up yourself, Sarah.
All right,
Thank you so
Sarah.
much.
You
Thank you
guys,
so
you,
much.
you guys, kudos to
All right.
you and keep learning. Okay, keep learning. This is you have the ability of getting this course is amazing. You have an amazing, sensei there. You have great people that are so passionate and they do this because they love it. So be good advocate, be good stewards, and be good students. That's all that you can ask for. There is a life of learning ahead of you, and this is just the start, but at least you're in it, and that puts you ahead, light years ahead of everybody else's. So good on you, and best of luck, and be well.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Sarah, we'll allow you to leave at your own leisure. So, we're going to pass over to Nino and our Evan and our Palesa. Where is our Evan? Let me pin him here.
I'm here, but I don't know how long I'll be able to stay. I kind of have a seminar coming up in a minute.
All right, cool.
But I'll probably
It's a
pass
quick
back
one.
and forth between it.
It's a quick one, this. I have a question. Tricia, did you take part in the Ideathon last time?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, cool. But Palesa, you did, right?
I did.
Okay, so you'll be able to like give your perspective of the Ideathon from a student's perspective, right? After Nino and Evan break it down. So essentially, this session is not going to be long. This is not a long thing. So we're going to be done with this 10-minute stops. So Nino and Evan and Palesa are going to go through the Ideathon so that we give you a heads up as to what to expect next week. All right? Because the Ideathon is essentially, sorry, let me all mics. Yeah, so then Palesa, Nino, and Evan, you'll unmute yourselves. So anyway, the Ideathon is what we are going to be assessing. Okay?
Okay.
Over
3
to you.
minutes tops, because if we got 3 speakers in 10 minutes, I'll give it to you in 3. So the
Mhm.
Ideathon is essentially a framework that we want you to fill out. It's a form we want you to fill out. You can submit it to us however you want. It can be a video. It can be 20 pages long. It can be a quick slideshow, which a lot of people did last time. What it is we are going to ask you, what is the problem in your community? Just tell us something that is wrong in your community. And then you're going to say, how do you plan on fixing this problem by applying blockchain technology? Micropayments, how are you going to fix it with on-chain data? How are you going to fix it with smart contracts? How are you going to correct this problem? Now that you've identified the blockchain, why or what other solutions exist right now? And why is yours going to be better than that solution? So I don't need you to recreate a database when there's databases all over the place. So yeah, you can use blockchain as a database, but what other solutions exist right now that are kind of already doing that? Why should we choose you? So if it's, hey, we should solve real estate, we should start putting real estate on the chain. Okay, well, what chain do you want to use? We're going to use Polkadot. Okay, well, what exists already? Well, you have a lot of money, a lot of systems that exist for tracking and moving real estate. Identify those. Why is your solution better? And why should we choose you? So if you've never worked in real estate, you're not a lawyer, you're not in that field at all, the chances of us deciding that, yeah, you really have a shot at changing this whole network, it's not a realistic thing. And ultimately, there was one more part, I forget what it is, but I've only got 3 minutes. We will explain all of this to you in better detail in another class. You'll know exactly what's going on, but it starts with a problem in your community, something that annoys you, something you see all the time, something that when you're going through these classes, you're like, wow, that'd be really good to apply here, something I deal with every day. If you're a lawyer, saving your legal documents. If you're a dentist, saving your patient records, whatever it be, problems that affect you and your community, and something that applies to you, something that you can actually get after.
And
you don't have to be the end all be all. You don't have to be the reason, right? So I'm not an educator by trade. I'm a cyber defense guy. I do like compliance and defending networks and stuff like that. But I know Evan, who is an educator, and this is his life. This is his dream. This is his, you don't have to be the guy, but you should choose us because I know Evan, like that's a valid reason. So just that's in a nutshell. There's 3 winners, $300 a piece, and other awards as well. 300 US in whatever crypto you want, however you want it. It could be US dollar if you want. I don't care. But that's the gist of it. Seeing as how there are 39 participants right now, you have a almost 40% chance of being chosen, something like that. I don't do math, but it seems pretty high that if the people that actually submit are the people that are still in this class right now, which is probably pretty likely, then one of you being chosen, chances are pretty high.
yeah, and just to extend your point, it doesn't even end at the cash award, which is basically
no.
going to be like a token of appreciation. It goes beyond that. There's the Paris residency, and you heard from Cyril and Dels on Monday that they're looking to work with people. You don't have to be a dev, you don't have to have all the knowledge. So that's why we gave you that feedback form to like put down what you think can be done for you, right? So this idea can kind of starts opening up your thought process, expanding your thought process. And they will be looking for projects that can be built on a blockchain and not short term because they're looking to work with people long term. So you have this opportunity. It goes beyond the ideathon, but the ideathon is step 1. This bootcamp has 3 stages. The current bootcamp, which is like a filtration point, and then the ideathon. Then it goes into a hackathon phase, and we have different partners for hackathons. So there's Hedera, like you heard from Jake. There's XRPL. There's other blockchains we're talking to. You'll hear from like Solana next week. So there's different chains that you can build on, even on Bitcoin if you want to. And then there's the Electric Dreams phase, which also goes hand in hand with the Paris residency, the Aquarium residency. So there's opportunities for you guys to do whatever it is that you want to do, but you just have to take things seriously. So the ideathon is like a filtering stage to some extent because the high quality students are really going to stand out at that point. Correct, Nino?
Yes, I do want to mention something. Your IP remains yours. So your
Yeah.
idea is your idea. We will not take it. We don't need to. I have enough already. That I mean, this is being recorded right now. Your idea is yours. Please protect it. Don't start sharing it in the groups. Like, hey, I've got this great idea. Please don't do that. You submit it with the ideathon. Let us actually help you with that. There's one more thing. Yeah, we don't. We won't continue these ideas without you. I mean, I have a job, I have this, I have my hobbies, I have a family, I have enough to do. But we will support you as you come across barriers and need help getting to a product to market. So if you are like, hey, I just need a back-end developer. I've got the front-end guy. I need a back-end developer. Okay, well, we'll put you in contact with some back-end developers. So we're not going to be the ones looking for that, though. We're not going to be pushing these projects for you. Again, the problem's in your community. I'm not the guy to fix those. But anyway, I want to hand off to the other people so that they can speak as well.
Oh, cool. Palesa, do you just want to share with us your experience in terms of the ideathon and what you think the students this time should look out for or develop better for them to be able to go to the next stage? Oh, and before I hand over to Palesa, for you to get to step 3, the Electric Dream stage, we're literally looking for the next big thing. You know, like when you watch Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or whatever, you know, Apprentice, whatever, we're looking for ideas that can literally be brought to the world. So this is not just about a fully funded boot camp and you feel like you're wasting your time not attending class and all. Like there's other things to it. It builds on and it builds on. All right, Palesa, back to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brian. Through my experience, really, what were required of us was to like just to show if we understand how blockchain works and try to find a problem in your community and then try to tell us how the blockchain will solve that problem in your community. So that's what we were doing. So like Nino said that we have to you have to show why your solution is better. Basically, why is it better? Why? And also like what are the chances of the solution getting implemented in your community? Don't bring something like maybe that involves the government, and then we're going to have a problem with implementation, see? But unless you have like a very strong connection with the government, and then you know that you have somebody that you can work with to implement that solution. One more thing is that you don't necessarily need to have the code in background, like it's already mentioned, and everybody should participate. Everyone, it doesn't matter, everyone. So even if you're a lawyer, I know there are some lawyers in here, and you feel like this is just too much for you, but you have to participate to show that you really understand how blockchain works. Okay, so okay, so you're probably thinking, well, I'm just a lawyer. I don't think I have a winning idea. Try yourself. You might be surprised, you know? So yeah, so that's basically what I'm just gonna say. This is more like an assessment. It's if you don't go through this, then you're not getting a certificate. So you have to do it. Yeah, that's what I can say, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Palesa, and thanks for adding that last part, because the last time we had 2 pieces of assessment, but we dropped one and said, let's focus on one, because we are trying to build successful entrepreneurs and startups, you know? So there's no point of you doing like a written assessment. But this, the Ideathon, is a must because we need to really benchmark where you are and where you're going. Jedidah has asked a question here. Can we get to see one idea to full completion, showcasing all 3 stages? So if you have an idea that you want to take from the bootcamp phase to the Ideathon phase, so bootcamp Ideathon phase to hackathon phase, which in some instances will have like a startup pitch competition, to accelerator phase with the Electric Dreams, that's fine. You don't have to have different ideas at different points. You can literally, like Nino says, build that baby, okay, from now to the end. So this is our second boot camp. We are still working with ideas from the first boot camp. So there's students still within the community who we are helping to get developers and, you know, structure their intellectual property rights for them to go to the next stage. So
and they were not the Ideathon winners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah. There's some really good ideas that want Ideathon winners because we had to only have 3 Ideathon winners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we never abandon our community. We are very unique in that way. Like it's not just about the assessment and graduation and that's it. That's why someone like Palesa is sitting here and Trisha being here in the background as well. And I think Benita as well, I've seen her name pop up. Like we retain that relationship with our community because we believe in the success and the vision of the Web3 and emerging technology ecosystem. So if you feel it's not for you, it's not for you. But if you feel it's for you and you have a chance of doing it, then it is for you. Okay. Paul, I think I'm going to give you this chance to talk to some of your members, some of your community members because I know there's some people who came to this through Abia as a partner. Hey, Muhammad, that's really good vibes. I hope that you are actually going to be one of the winners. So, Paul, I know you have a session next week, but take this opportunity, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You know, Kenyans will say 2 minutes and we take long. But Paul, please, 2 minutes to just like talk to your community about the importance of this idea, because we are trying to also come into Kenya, into Nigeria, to have our accelerator ecosystems there. So it would be useful for our members, especially who've come through our partners, to understand the seriousness of this commitment.
Good evening, everyone, again. So my name is Paul Makolaka. So I just want to say that, and this I'm speaking from the heart to the young people, because I know that Africa as a continent has the most youthful population, and the many challenges that we have in this continent, in a very, very big way, it affects, I think, mostly the young people, apart from the women. So these emerging technologies, for example, such kind of initiatives actually go a long way in trying to create opportunities for young people. Because we all know that, for example, if you look at the traditional world in terms of even becoming an entrepreneur, there are a lot of barriers to entry. In terms of, for example, you need a startup capital to be able to start a business, to start a physical business. But when it comes with opportunities or businesses that that these emerging technologies can create, the barriers to entry actually are brought down. So these are opportunities that that we should be able to take them, embrace them, and see what we can do with our lives, how we can transform our lives, how we can change our lives, how we can create opportunities for us. I think it is high time that we have been used to asking our governments what our governments can do for us. But history has shown that, and probably I will disappoint you, that our governments are not going to do anything for us. It is up to us. So it is high time that we took our future on our own hands, in our own terms. So these are some of those opportunities that have been presented to us. If we don't embrace them, if we don't take advantage of them, history will judge us very harshly. So it is up to us. It is up to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nino. Thank you, Palesa. And thank you, everybody. I don't think I have anything further to say. I'm really happy with today's sessions. They were remarkable. And the class members who are in attendance today, you've been superb. You've been rock stars. You've engaged with the content. You've asked the relevant questions. And you're really showing your desire to take this to the next step. So just keep at it. Have a restful weekend. We are back at it on Monday to Friday again. It's going to be wild, but it's going to be so exciting. We have really exciting content. Remember the feedback form. Tell us especially what you want to learn on the session with XRPL, okay? Because I know some of you that are non-devs and newbies, you found it a bit complex. So we want to make it work for you. The only way we can make it work for you is by you giving feedback to suggest some of the topics you'd like to hear and understand, all right? And don't get put off by the coding stuff. There's no code blockchains and all that. So you'll still be successful either way. Just focus. Don't lose focus, okay, guys? So have a fantastic weekend. Go rest up. The Kenyans, go grab some Tuskers and, whatever it is people are still drinking in Kenya. Like,